It's morning. You wake up in the glass igloo where you spent the night. A fresh blanket of snow covers the ground, and your kid is playing in it. And you see the joy, and you see the sunlight come through the pine trees, and you walk together through a cave made out of ice. And in this moment, I swear, we are in Finland.
Finland is known as the happiest country in the world. So there's this report that comes out every year. It's called the World Happiness Report. And one country seems to keep winning year after year. They kind of feel like the Lakers of the early 2000s. Economists have looked into it, wanting to know if it's something about this country's social safety nets that creates a sense of contentment. Others have pondered if it's Finnish nature, though at first glance it's not exactly hospitable. Psychologists have used the example of Finland to question how we even define happiness in the first place. I came here with my son just to spend some quality time with him, but it's understandable why the world has taken such an interest in Finnish happiness. I wonder if my impression of it is going to change after seeing it up close. Let's do this. So to people in Finland, happiness is something else. It's not quite the same as how many Americans and how much of the world would think of happiness. In fact, I think if you were to spend time in Finland and get to know a lot of Finns, you might sort of think, wait, these are the happiest people?
And Finnish people themselves are often surprised by that distinction. A lot of them actually see themselves as pessimistic, so it's a bit funny that they keep winning. But people sometimes think that that's the actual secret to Finnish happiness. Keep your expectations in check, and you won't be disappointed. The way the World Happiness Report is conducted, it often asks about several different indicators of happiness. Often, Finns have wised up to the fact that the outside world is curious and has these questions about their culture. I wonder if some answer in ways to manipulate the survey, I'm not sure in which direction. But other Finns have also owned this part of their reputation. There are several groups offering retreats or even master classes where people can learn the secrets of Finnish happiness. While I'm not going that route, I am taking note on what I see here, and I want to share a few Finnish keys to being happy.
Embracing life outside. It's one of those key decisions that makes Finnish culture among the happiest in the world. So even when you're in the center of Helsinki in the most urban spot of the country, you're only 30 minutes removed from a national park. The Finns value nature. They understand that there's a big benefit to being outside. There's even a thing where there's a belief in the benefits of having a baby just sleep outside under the chilly air, snuggled up under a blanket, of course, but still, that fresh air, it's good for you. But perhaps that's what led to a deeper realization that people need to live harmoniously with nature, to figure out how to work with it and not against it. Why you need to be familiar with nature's rhythms and temperament. And one thing I really appreciate about the Finnish relationship with nature is that being outside isn't this all or nothing ordeal, In the US, we based our national park system around this idea of untouched, sacred, pure nature, and so human activity in the day-to-day is really kept far away from it. But here, it's emphasized to just be outside. It doesn't have to be rappelling through canyons or a national park. It can just be eating your meal outside or going on a daily walk through the park. It's more about just being outside regularly and consistently.
Remember that big lesson at the end of Into the Wild? Happiness is only real when shared? I think Finland embodies that mindset quite well.
In other places, and I'm thinking a lot about the US here, happiness is more of this rugged, individualistic pursuit. And it's not that way over here.
Perhaps the harsh conditions and cold winters made people realize a while back that their survival benefited from everyone living in harmony with each other. The way you see that these days is through Finland's strong social safety net, which many attribute as an underlying reason for the country always being at the top of happiness charts.
And truly, let's say I lived in a place that didn't have that. Even if I was living in a comfortable state where all my needs were met, if the other people around me were in a constant state of uncertainty, that's only going to get me so far, you know? That creates this broader atmosphere of fear, tension, inequity, and that's something that Finland understands quite well. The conditions of your environment matter. There's a lot less anxiety knowing that if something unfortunate happens, your community has your back. Bottoms up. Imagine if you were in a country where half of the people went to the library at least once a month. Finnish people love the library. Of course, I would too if this was my library. I'm at the Udi Library in Helsinki. The ground floor includes a restaurant, a movie theater, games, spaces for meetings and events. Floor 2, more games, workspaces, instruments, tools. You could play music, check out a 3D printer. And the top floor is a bit more of a classic reading area, but extremely open and aesthetic. This place stays open up until late at night, and there are classes where you could learn languages. All of this is free. Of course, books are pretty important.
To me, this epitomizes some of the best parts of Finnish culture, and it's trying to make the important things of life accessible to everyone.
While Finland is listed as the happiest country in the world, it probably wouldn't rank as high if we were choosing the most optimistic country in the world. Finns tend to not be terribly caught up in futuristic ambitions. Back in the US, there's this constant effort to try and make it, to accomplish some big feat. In Finland, it seems people set their aim towards being okay, just reaching a state of contentment. And being okay or content is a higher priority than being exuberant at all times. It's a bit ironic that Finland is known for happiness because there's a lot of words and sayings in the Finnish language that mean something like happiness ends in tears. There are a lot of words of advice cautioning against the pursuit of happiness, which is a cornerstone of American ideals. But by keeping the ambitions in check, you aren't as prone to heartbreak or disappointment. You'll likely have a higher satisfaction rate if your main aim is simple contentment. I'll be honest. This approach challenges what I'm used to. I tend to like a good pursuit, and I think that highs and lows give life its flavor. I find a lot of value in having a big, ambitious goal you chase after. But maybe that's something the Finnish have a different term for. Sisu. It's the Finnish word that means embracing the adversities of life. We don't really have an English equivalent. The closest thing I can think of is probably the word valor, but we don't really use that one a whole lot anymore, unless we're talking about, like, knights or something.
The Finnish word sisu roughly translates into English as strength of will, determination, perseverance, and acting rationally in the face of adversity.
Anyway, sisu means, like, courage, perseverance, determination, and resolve mixed together, except the thing that I think is different about it is it doesn't represent just, like, a one-time demonstration of those traits, but just this ongoing, like this is a part of how you do things. It's your outlook on the world. It's kind of like saying, I know challenges are going to come my way, that's life, but hey, I'm going to be here to meet them. We can do hard things. That's sisu, and it's a way of life I really respect and kind of try and embrace myself. So this might sound ironic, but I think one of the hallmarks for happiness in Finnish culture is to be okay with a certain amount of unhappiness. It's kind of like pre-acknowledging that life isn't going to be all happy and sunshine all the time, and just being willing to accept the hardships and the challenges along with the good stuff. It's kind of like pre-acknowledging that life is gonna have its challenges, gonna have its hardships, and being ready to accept that, along with the good stuff. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the concept of sisu pretty well. Overall, people are happier and healthier when you realize that trying to just shield yourself from sadness is a futile effort. It's another way of managing your expectations. Some days are going to be rough, and that's okay. They're not all going to be like that. In a lot of other cultures, you see this great big effort put trying to avoid sadness or to block it out or to just move on to the next thing as soon as you can. But if you make room for it, I think it gives you more resilience and more allowance to weather those hard days when they inevitably come. Things are not set in stone. Okay, this is another element of Finnish happiness that I'm learning. No, I think it's more common in other cultures, I'm thinking largely of the US, to really pre-anticipate that things are going to go awesome or terrible, you know? Like, for example, I'm traveling with my kid right now, and I think there's a lot of tendency to think far international with a 4-year-old. It's going to be so difficult, that's going to be tough, and it's like, you know, maybe, but also maybe not. And I think a more Finnish way would be to reserve judgment on that until you're actually there, until it's actually happening. To take that a step further, I think it's more common in US culture, in my more familiar settings, to move towards the future with a lot of expectations, you know, to anticipate our next moves all the time, to think I'm going to finish school and I'm going to start this program and I'm going to go over here and move here, and it's just like scripting so much ahead of time. You really set yourself up for things to go differently, which more often than not can be challenging. So I kind of like that approach of just holding back your judgment. As someone who spends a lot of time thinking about the future, I'm trying to practice this more.
What if it's not so much about trying to create happiness as it is being in a position to receive it, to notice it when it strikes? So often our approach is fueled by ambition. Let me just do this one thing that I enjoy, and when I get to this point, I can coast, I'm going to be happy. One thing I've learned is that you'll experience more joy if you just took the approach of being ready to notice those subtler moments of happiness when they strike. There are those super specific flavors within the meal you're eating. You don't have to just scarf everything down. There's the simple delight of a quiet night in. The Finnish have a word for staying home in your underwear and drinking, and the fact that they've even romanticized that is a good clue that their happiness doesn't come so much from having higher highs, but noticing the basic delights that hide in plain sight. Alright, I am back at home now, and that was my exploration into happiness from a Finnish perspective. I feel like I learned quite a bit. There are a bunch of aspects about happiness from a Finnish perspective that I mesh with so clearly, and that I can just, I feel like I already take to. For example, that integration with nature, or that habit of looking out for the other people around you. I feel like those are values I share and try and put into practice. I'm gonna admit though, there are some elements that I do find more challenging. Like, for example, how people cultivate happiness by trimming down their extreme emotional experiences, you know? I tend to think things like the anticipation, the absolute ecstasy of a high, or the defeat when things come crashing down. I kind of feel like those are the things that give life its flavor, you know? And it's not about trying to shield yourself from the letdown, because when you do that, you also shield yourself from the joy and the beauty. And I don't know, who am I to critique a repeat winner of the world's happiest country, like, 6-7 years in the running? That said, I kind of feel like I'm a bit more in touch with, I don't know, a Latinized expression of happiness. Ride those waves, feel it all. Like, let life be seasoned by those strong flavors. One aspect that I really admire that I'm trying to do better at is just that inclination towards being present, you know? Like, don't just over-anticipate an experience, let it come to you and let things play out and then just be there for it. Anyway, hope you had fun with that exploration, and if you ever get the chance to go to Finland, I highly recommend it.